This is Big Bacon Brad Hollister, and you're listening to the Three Count Podcast.
Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me. Do you wanna get live with me? Do you wanna get live with me?
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by now, after season 4 and our 300 and something episode, I would just hope you say with me, I am your Sherpa, because like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. That's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring today? You can find this man at Chaotic. You can find him at Wrestling Open. You can find him at ICW, NEW, Beyond, PAPW, and Live. He is a force to meet with. He is the leader of big business. He is Big Bacon Brad Hollister.
How we doing? It's a pretty good intro, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, you asked me to be on. I said absolutely. We made it work. We figured out the times. We had a couple delays, but we made it happen.
You know what's so funny, man, is that like I heard your interview right with Justin Del Rio on What's Up Wrestler back during the pandemic. And I was like, yo, this is a guy that I got to bring on the show, have a conversation with, because like that's when this all like first started, right? And listening to you, listening to BRG, and listening to Gabby Ortiz, like a bunch of names of people that were going through like this, and I started nitpicking. I was like, oh, I want to pick this person's brain, that person's brain, just start learning about the business from those guys. And yeah, so like this, like to be real, like this is like one of the longest interviews I've been chasing was yours.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, no, like you said, during the pandemic, we all had a lot more time on our hands. So I had my own podcast at the time. So I kind of know how it is to be on the interview side of it, and it's tough. So like when I am the guest, I try to bring the juice a little bit. I try to, have a little fun with it because I know how it is on the other side. And if the other person's not really giving you much, not
Yeah.
really much you could do about it.
Bro, that is the worst, is like when you're trying to like give interviews and like talk to people, and then you're like, it's pulling teeth. And you're like, come on, man. Like, I know. Listen, I see you in the ring. You are so vocal. Like, why
You
can't
have a personality. Show it.
let me know who you are. Like, it's so easy, it's so much fun. But yeah, no, I definitely feel what you're saying, because I know when I get put on when I get interviewed on podcasts too, it's also very like eye-opening, because sometimes like you have a host that like, so I see on this day you wrestled this person, tell me about that match. And you're like, bro, like we're not going through my cage fight, just
Oh,
so
that's
you
the worst part. I don't remember. Like I have the worst memory, and I'm very lucky to know it has nothing to do with like head trauma or anything because I've always been like this. You know what I mean? Like I've had this terrible memory my whole life, so at least I know it's like nothing to be concerned about. But yeah, people ask me about like certain memories or certain moments, and like I remember it happened, but like I couldn't tell you details about the day. So that's another reason I try to bring the energy as a guest because I'm not going to give great content with my answers. So at least people leave being like, all right, at least this guy seems like a fun dude.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I had told you, right? So talking about like I only see you as a heel, right? Because like I watch your heel work, and by the way, chef's kiss is beautiful. But like
Appreciate
to
that.
see you at other places as a face, I was like, hey, yo, like my trainer has always trained me to be like, hey, learn to work babyface and work heel, right? And to see you like come out, I'm like, yo, this does not, it's almost like watching MJF work in face. It's like it's there. You're like, yo, it's hard to wrap your mind around, but you can't help but get captivated in like how much energy you do put out there.
Well, so it's the same thing as being a guest of the podcast, right? Like I've been on the other side of it. So when I'm a heel and I'm a babyface that's giving me nothing and they're not firing up and they're not, getting the people going, like it sucks. So when I'm a babyface, I'm trying to make sure I don't do that for the heel. So it's the same kind of thing when it's like interviewing and getting interviewed. Being a babyface, being a heel, you want the other one, like you should know what you want the other one to do, right? Like I'm a heel everywhere and I love being a heel. But I know what I want out of my baby face. So when I am the baby face, I know what to give out because when I'm the heel, I expect that to be given out of my opponent. So
It's one of those things that I was learning, and I forget who I was talking to about it, but that was like the one thing that and they work both babyface and heel at the time, and obviously like with that kind of conversation you're having, you're really talking about it, but it's one of those things where it's like your baby face helps your heel work, and then your heel work helps your baby face, and
Oh, of
like
course.
that's why you learn so much and how you do so much. So it's definitely interesting to hear people talk about like that aspect of like the business and like to grow into it. So that's why I being here, being on the other side, or just working both sides of, on in the ring is it's very interesting to like help develop you as like a character, as a wrestler, as a person, just in general. Like it's fun.
Yeah, like so when I was I mean I'm still with Northeast Wrestling, but when like before the pandemic at Northeast Wrestling, I was a babyface for the longest time, and I was only a babyface everywhere, like PvP for the longest time, like all these places I would constantly work as a babyface. So then when everything kind of came back around, everywhere just started bringing me in as a heel. And like I said, I would know what I would want as a heel because I had that long run as a baby face. So like it lends hand in hand where it just helps, it strengthens the other one because you know what you want out of the other side. So when you're on the other side, you're like, oh shit, like, oh, excuse me. I was like, you better give it because that's what you should do. That's what's going to make everything better.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so really like to like stop in, man. So let's talk about it. Who's Brad Hollister?
I mean, if you're breaking down Brad Hollister, it's not too much different from who I am on a day to day. Um, I've always been an athlete, and I kind of surround myself with that as my background, like whether in character or in life. Like I think everything kind of lends its hand back to sport with me. I think that's where I kind of grew the most as a person. That's kind of where I developed myself the most was in an athletic background. Like I was an amateur wrestler my whole life, football player my whole life. Um, wasn't a great basketball player, but I say all the time that's my favorite sport. And if I were to ever coach a sport, it would be basketball because I think since it was like the sport I wasn't naturally good at, it like made me obsessed with it. So
Mm.
I know how to play basketball, just not as good at it. But better than 90% of the wrestlers. Anytime I see a wrestler shoot a basketball, it's embarrassing. So I will say that anytime I say I'm a bad basketball player, other wrestlers are like, no, I see you play, you can play. I'm like, yeah, I could play for our level. But like when I go against people who play, I stink. Um, so that's kind of like I brought that just into the Brad Hollister like character and everything because I'm not an actor, you know what I mean? Like I've said that forever. Like if I was an actor, I would be in theater, you know what I mean? I'm not. So I always said if I got into pro wrestling, it would just be myself cranked up to 11, and that's what it is. Like when I'm a heel, that's me when I'm not in a good mood, when I'm a little bit ornery, you know what I mean? Where I'm not too happy. But when I'm babyface, it's me when, because my real life job, I work in a school. I'm a teacher, so I try to bring the juice every day with the kids, and try to be as positive as possible and really like start their day off right. So for me, when I am babyface, same kind of thing. I'm trying to get people happy, get people smiling. Like I'm not too much like a comedy guy. Like I'm not, doing like BS spots the whole time. But when I'm in there, like I just want people to be enjoying what they're watching. You know what I mean? So that's all. Like when people ask like who's Brad Hollister, like that would be who it is the most. It's me. Like I know that might be a cop out easy answer, but it is. Like I'm not an actor. I'm not gonna be someone I'm not.
But the funny thing is that and you saying the one thing that kind of like makes good characters, right, is that you're genuine to who you are, right? And that's like a very important thing because it's like so like Red Dog, right? Like just for instance, he's like a big comedy character, like but that's me because like I just might take myself and crank it up to 11 too as well. And I think about like those aspects of like, oh well, I was in the military, so everybody's like, when you think of the military dude, you're always like, yeah, that stoic dude who's got like a brat, like stern look, and always like, yeah, march forward, and I got the game plan, blah blah blah. No one thinks about the one dude who's like the just strict asshole who's in the back just fucking off, and that's me, like 100%. Like like there's like so like the scene in Captain America, right, where all the privates were like, oh, if we climb with the flagpole, we get to ride in the jeep for free and just go down the road. Meanwhile, everybody's climbing, and I'm the one that pulls the pin to get the flag because I'm like, whatever, you guys are stupid. I'm gonna just do this. Like that's me. So I'm
Work
like,
smarter, not harder, you know?
yeah. So I was like, why do I have to sit here and play by the same rules as everybody else? Is they're gonna all be dumb and try to do that? And
Well,
it's
I will say this as well, though. So wrestling is very aesthetics, right? So it's like how you look. I'm very lucky that I look very similar to what my personality is. You know what I mean? Like I kind of look like the former high school jock who is still hanging on to those memories. So like that helps that that's exactly who I am, you know? So it kind of flows into that. So that definitely helps my aspect of it where I could see if I was like 110 pounds, me suplexing people, that's not gonna equate, you know? So at least I look the way I act. So that does help me out a little bit.
I'm just curious though, like, have you like, do you still go out with like, so I know this part, right? But I'm just, have you ever gone out with like your Letterman jacket and just like,
No, 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 no. So that's I think my one saving grace was that the way I left high school was so bad, and like so not to get in too deep, but let's break down who I am. The way I look at it was growing up, I was like a terrible kid. I was a terrible person. I was getting in fights all the time, and I was kind of like the nutcase of the school. So I try to like disassociate myself from that as much as possible. Now, when I am talking about old high school football wrestling memories, of course I'm going to brag because I was a stud. But I don't talk to those like I don't really talk to that group anymore. Like maybe like one or two people from it that I'll really like still talk to, and I think it's because like they knew me a little bit more. They knew that there was layers beyond me throwing desk and flipping off teachers. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
there was a person behind there. So like there's only a few people I still remain in contact with, but for the most part, no. I try to disassociate that part as much as possible.
I think if you came out with like your own Letterman jacket though, like, and just like rocked it, just
Big
imagine
business
like
Letterman's
this.
that big business Letterman. That's a pretty solid idea. I'm not gonna lie. I
Yeah,
might steal it.
I like that. I would just, I low key, I'm if I see it happen, I know I'm gonna be grinning from ear to ear because I'm be like, yeah, that was on the podcast. We talked about that. So,
Yeah, that might
uh,
be like if we have like a big event coming up, that might be the entrance attire for that one. I always like to do big entrance attire for big matches, so
yeah.
maybe if we have a big business match, where we're selling a big house and a lot of people are there, and we have the worthy opponents and the worthy match. Maybe we'll break out some big business Lettermans. We'll see. We'll see.
Man, I know three individuals who live down in Maryland who also have a friend who lives in Massachusetts, and they run as a little faction too when they put things together. So I mean, I don't know, we could figure it out sometime.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe we can. You gotta
but
you gotta
really,
bring the Lettermans though.
I will bring. Hey, we will all have a real on the real fun fact. We all have like these kind of hoodies that legit like we'll say like either Red Dog or Pure Ignorance. It's hilarious, and I love every bit of it. So yeah, it would definitely be something that it would be a lot of fun to do.
There we go.
We could do like the jocks versus the not so jocks.
And that's what
uh,
helps too. Like, I think we all like, and that was when we were putting it together. I said I want it to be as real as possible because, like I said, like I'm not an actor. Like I wasn't gonna be just join up with people that I don't really get along with. I don't have similar interests with. So when I see like Chase was posting about the Celtics all the time, so I was like, all right, he's a Celtic fan. I can mess with him. And then Cruz, I was posting about the Giants. Now I'm not a Giants guy, but I love football. So I was like, all right. And TJ, I was talking about basketball and sports. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna get along great with these guys.
Everybody talks about sports. We love this.
I'm like, this is my crew.
This is it. This is my crew. uh, but how did you want to get into the business?
So again, going back to my troubled youth, I was always a fan of wrestling, and then my freshman year, I made it to varsity football, and then right before the last game, because the way the report cards work is they come out right before the last game of the season. So I got kicked off the team because I didn't have the grades. So I couldn't play in the last game. My team actually made it to the Super Bowl that year, so I missed the last game and like the big Super Bowl.
Damn.
And yeah, I was pissed. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring up my grades my sophomore year. Didn't. So I wasn't playing a sport for the first time in my entire life. Like I was signed up for sports from like second grade all the way till high school. So like I had nothing to do, and I was nuts. So I was just like, I got to do something. I got to do something. Um, we found my parents were always super supportive, and I always like give them so much credit, and because just the way they were able to handle how I was growing up, you know what I mean? Like they never gave up on me. They to this day, like they always let me know they're proud of my growth as a person. So like I give all the credit in the world to my parents. Um, but they found a wrestling school in Palmer, and they said, listen, you can do this, but once your grades get back up, because it wasn't even like a if, it was like when they get back up, you go back to the sports, and then if you want to wrestle when you're done, it's right there for you, you know? So I started wrestling when I was 15. I had a couple matches when I was 15, 16, probably like a dozen or so, and then brought my grades back up, went back to football, amateur wrestling, and then once I was done with high school, came back to pro wrestling. So it was like I was always a fan, and I just didn't have the grades for football or wrestling or uh, basketball and wrestling was in the same season, so I wasn't doing that in high school, but it was just mostly football, wrestling, and then off-season wrestling. So I didn't have the grades for that, and I was like, I got to do something. I always liked wrestling. I was a huge fan, so found a school that was pretty close to my house, so figured it out.
It's one of those things. So, and you keep touching back on like the amateur wrestling because I was an amateur wrestler as well and wrestled in the college level, and like it is so crazy to think like how much like amateur wrestling actually prepares you for pro wrestling. Like,
Oh yeah, the first like month, because especially like I was trained by Thomas Santel, and he's very like he wants you to know the basics before you get into anything else, which is I think the correct way to train. So when we were doing like rolls and chaining and lockups and all and blow up drills, I was fresh out of high school football. Like at 15 years old. So all that shit came to me so easy. You know what I mean? So like everyone's like, "Oh, this kid's like a prodigy." No, I wasn't. I was just coming. Like that's what I've been doing my entire life was rolls and blow up drills, and chaining is just like amateur wrestling when the coach is watching and you're with your buddy. You know what I mean? Like if anyone's an amateur wrestler, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Your coach is watching and you're with your buddy and you're kind of like messing around. You're not really going too hard. But when the coach is watching, you're pretending you're going hard. And you're
yeah,
like, you guys are like countering each other. It's like the best wrestling match of all time just because the coach is watching and you're trying to BS him so you can get away with just messing around with your buddy in the corner. So that's what like chain wrestling was to me. I was like, this is everyone's like, "Oh, why did you go for that?" I'm like, "I don't know. That's what I would have gone for if we were amateur wrestling." And they're like, "That was the right thing to do." And I was like, oh. Like, so that part came super easy to me. It was like, to me, more like the next level stuff is when like it took me a while to get there. But the beginning where it's like lockups, rolls, basic bumps, like that was like I was very lucky to take to it like a duck to water. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's one of those things too. Like, I think like for me, it was like amateur wrestling and then getting in the military and getting out and then like finding a place to train at. Like it just came. It's weird how like you said you hit it perfectly, right? It's like a duck taking the water. It's you just flow so naturally into like
Yeah.
all this stuff and you're just working into it and people just like I don't think they fully understand that like and not that I'm gonna brag on it, but I'm gonna brag on it, right? Wrestlers, like, we just get it. Like we low
Yeah.
get it. Whether you're, like yourself or Cruz or Ray Jazz, right? Or there's a lot of other amateur wrestlers out there that hey, we just get it. We understand. And we're
Well,
just
because like even think about it, when we learn a move in amateur wrestling, you have to go through it step by step, and then you go for it. Like then you go a little bit faster, and then you go full speed, and then you go with resistance, and then you try to apply it to a real situation. Very similar when you're first learning wrestling stuff, right? Like you learn how to lock up step by step, and then you start doing a lock up, and then you go a little bit faster, and then you work a lock up, and then you're just doing a match, and you see the guy do a little like give you a little look. You're like, all right, we're locking up. You know, it's
yeah.
like same kind of thing, you know.
That's why I was like I was fortunate, man, when I got to pop up at to bio and just kind of run a quick session with y'all. And it was, it was an hour long, all right, y'all, to chill out. All right. But it was just something just breathtaking. It was a fresh take for me because it was something that I needed because it's like and I told you too, like hadn't been in the ring like a month, it seemed like. and it was just nice to get back in the ring. But it was funny because Alec Price had said something to me like the week before, right? He's like, when you get back in the ring, he's like, it's gonna feel kind of rusty, but then like somewhere in the mist, everything's just gonna click again. And sure enough, like while I was in the training, I felt it all come back to life, and I was like, I needed this so badly.
Hey, it'll do it for you. That's why we all still do it.
Yeah. So I know you've been in for a while, so my question needs to be, because everybody has one of these, and I want to know yours. What's the worst bump you've taken?
Oh, it had to be when I tore my ACL.
Mm.
I don't even know why I thought about that for a second. I haven't like knock on wood. I've been lucky where at least maybe not even lucky, maybe just smart where I'm like, yeah, that's not for me. But when I tore my ACL, it was at the White Eagle for Beyond Wrestling. They're doing Uncharted Territory. I was wrestling Chuck O'Neill, who's a great friend of mine, great person. I think we actually became like really good friends through this because he was checking on me like every day. Uh, so I just did a regular dive over the top rope, and it's now it's funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but now it's funny because I remember in my head as I was going over, I was like, I'm gonna land on my feet and I'm gonna fire up so big. I'm like, this crowd's gonna go nuts when I hit this dive. Cause like, especially at the time, I was like 260 and I'm not the tallest guy. So I'm like 5'10", 260. Like that was a thick boy, you know what I mean? So I was like, me hitting this dive, like people are they're gonna come up. And I did not come up because the second I landed, my knee just exploded. And I'll never forget. I go to the referee. I said, I'm done. I'm done. And he looks at me, but I think he was like thinking like I'm in wrestler mode still. So he goes, 3, 4. And I was like, no, dude, like I am done. And then he got out and checked on me. I was like, yeah, my knee is shot. Like I'm not finishing this match. So that was definitely by far the worst bump.
I was gonna say because like I remember following you like back in like 2020 and seeing you now. Like you've definitely like leaned out like a
Yeah.
lot, and that you're like, I mean, you still look like you're packing like a lot of muscle on, but you've definitely like the body shape has changed, and I think it obviously benefits you because you seem like you're a lot faster in the ring than what you were
Honestly,
previously.
I'll take the compliment, but absolutely not. I think I was just lazier before. Because after I got hurt, I really feel like I wish I had the mindset I do now that I did then because I feel like I'm so much better of a worker now than I was then. Um, but oh yeah, dude, I was like 260 pounds and like I mean I can still like springboard all that. I just don't because for what? You know, like I'm gonna save that one for a big one. And I'm still saving it. Like so it might never happen, but it might. We'll see. Maybe my last one, I'll Randy Ram Jam springboard. But oh yeah, dude, like 250, I was like doing 250, 260, doing nip ups. I could do like that super crazy head roll nip up, like doing all that stuff, being like a very short, stocky guy. Now I can still do most of it, not all of it, but where I think it helps me the most is with the knee, right? Like so during the pandemic, I got super fat. And anytime someone gets fat, everyone gets sad for them. And they're like, oh, that guy must be going through something tough. Not me. Happiest I ever been in my life. I will say it to the end of time. I was 280 pounds. I was ordering like Chinese food, Domino's every day. It was the first time in my life I was actually saving money. So like I wasn't living check to check anymore. Oh my God. It was awesome. It was just awesome time, just being fat, stuck at home. Didn't have to. And again, I said I was playing sports my whole life. Wrestling doesn't have an off season, so, or pro wrestling doesn't have an off season. So the second I got out of sports, I just went right back into pro wrestling. So it was the first time I was having a break without recovering from an injury. I just got super duper fat, loved it, and then I I looked at I did like one or two shows because it was wrestling was starting to come back, and I didn't know if I even wanted to come back to it. And then I did a couple shows and I looked at the pictures and I was like, oof. I'm like, that's not a good look. Like, I gotta change that. I was like, that is terrible. And then I'm not gonna say his name because he would absolutely hate it, but I had a really good friend fat shame me, and I say this all the time. Fat shaming is bad if people like depending on the person, right? It's the same thing with everything, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's different. Like for me, if someone was like, "Nah, man, you look good. Like, don't worry about it," I would have kept eating and not cared. I would have been like, "Oh, dude, like my buddy says I look great still. Like, what I gotta worry about?" But he positively, I like, so I really gotta stress that, and that's why I'm not saying his name. Positively fat shamed me, and I was like, "Yo, you're right." I was like, "I gotta make this change now." I'm like, "What am I doing?" Uh, and then I just dove like head first in. I lost like, I want to say 40 pounds in like the first like 3 months of it. Like
Wow.
I'm down to like, I still say 250 when I come out, and my joke is when I weigh 250, I said 250. When I weigh 280, I said 250. When I weigh 220, I say 250. No matter what, I'm coming out at 250. But yeah, right now I'm down to like, I'm always bouncing between 250 and 220. So yes, getting the weight down was a very good thing, especially for the knee, because when I was heavy wrestling, it wouldn't hurt me in the moment, but afterwards it was like I would have to ice it. Like it was very, very sore all the time. So ever since I lost the weight, like literally zero issue with anything. Again, knock on wood, but zero issue with anything.
The funniest part was like for me, like I was weighing like 230 and I'm like 5'9", 5'10", depending, right? But I was weighing 230 and I kept like telling myself like, yo, I feel like I'm good. I'm great, right? And this was like 2016. It's like I'm good, I'm great. And then my daughter, God bless her, walked up to me and she's like, "Daddy, you're kind of squishy." And then my wife laughed. And when my wife laughed, I was like, "Oh shit, I've become that guy. Oh no." So I was like,
Yeah,
I gotta get in the
that's
gym.
that's another positive about working with children. They have no filter and they'll tell you how they feel. So anytime I start getting a little bit fat, my students are the first, and I tell them too, please tell me. If I'm looking a little bit chubby today, please remind me because they will put you in check so fast. No
Okay.
hesitation.
Yeah, that was
Adults will beat around the bush, not kids. They'll come up to you and say, "You're looking squishy today, Pops." You'll be like,
yeah.
"Oh shit, I gotta make a change."
Yeah, that's the first thing that and then I remember going to the gym and then like in the first I think in the first 6 months I went from being I was like 235 all the way down to like I think it was like 200 and then I even dropped further and I went down to like 179 and then I was just too skinny and I was like I
Yeah.
don't like this at all. I'm going to have to gain some weight and put some weight back on because I need to be back up like around the 200 range and feel comfortable and I was like that's where I'm going to sit. And that's why I stay.
Yeah, I did something. I was pretty similar where like I think it was around June ish. I was like 205. And like, even though like being short 205 does not sound like too thin, for me, it just felt weird. Like, I just didn't like how it looked. Like, I didn't feel as strong. So, yeah, I was like, nah, I'm like, I'm going to put like 10, 15 pounds back on. And now I'm like, I feel like I'm at my perfect weight. Like, this weight is where I want to stay. Like, right, 215, more on the 215 side than 220. But if I could stay right there, I'm golden. I'm golden, pony
Yeah,
boy.
I like it.
It's an
Hey,
outsider's
so
reference.
I love
7:30
it.
LA.
I'm right with you on that whole entire point. Like I say that stuff. I say that randomly to people all the time. Like while I'm at the gym. So like if I'm training clients and stuff like that, like I will make some random like 1980s movie reference and hope that somebody out there catches it and like laughs. And then if I do hear somebody, I'm like, yes, we got one in here.
No, that's what I say all the time. So when I was a seventh grader, again, troubled student, I loved it when we read The Outsiders for some reason. I was like, oh, this book's dope. Like I was just super into it. So every time like if the ELA teacher, because I'm the student support coordinator, so like I try to help out with like kids like with classroom engagement, all that good stuff. And sometimes like the ELA teacher, if they ask me a question, I'm like, gotta read The Outsiders. I'm like, gotta read The Outsiders. I'm like, that did it for me. I'm like, and I was the worst. I was like, if I like The Outsiders, our kids are gonna love The Outsiders.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, for me, it's because I grew up like in that era. So like, I remember one time like my daughter, like I would say stuff to her all the time, right? And she would answer, and she'd have questions, right? And I would just be like, "Yo, negative ghostwriter, like that pattern's all full." And so like one day, like I remember asking, her, I was like, "Yo," I was like, "Hey, do you got your homework?" And she was like, "Negative ghostwriter," and I was like, "Yeah, you can't say that." I was like, "Cause you have no reference point to where that comes from except me." I was
Yeah,
like,
like
"That's
if
not
someone
happening."
laughs at that and they'll say another reference from Ghost Rider, you'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, facts. Yo, all right. So let me ask this question, right? What's one of the hardest lessons you've had to learn being in the business?
Oh, humility. Like that's easy because again, I was very lucky where amateur wrestling. I was good, so it like my like I don't know how to say, like I don't want to sound like a douche, but like Western Mass, which is like our like before you get to states, I pinned my way through it. Like I was good at amateur wrestling. So when I got to pro wrestling, and it was like I was coming off of beating everyone in like 30 seconds to a minute because I would just headlock everyone, especially because everyone always hated the headlock because they call it a fish move.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, because everyone I wrestle is a fish. So I used to try to hit it on everyone just to be a jerk, right? Um, so when I got to pro wrestling, it was just like, oh, you have to like just go out there and like get beat up for 5 minutes and get no offense in. And I was just like, what? Like this makes no sense. Like I never cared about winning and losing. Like that's never like been my deal. But I was like, I'm not gonna go out there and just look like a punk the whole time. I'm like, I gotta get something in, right? So like to me, like that was the hardest part. Where it was just like, all right, you got to learn that it's not amateur wrestling and you're not just going out there and headlocking everyone in 30 seconds. Like you gotta pay your dues.
Yeah, that was something I had learned for me as well. It was one of those things where it's like I got upset. I remember I was doing a practice match, right? And I had one of my friends was agenting the match. And like it was me and another dude, and we had both probably been in maybe 7 months. They want us to do this practice match, and then they threw like all this shit at us, right? And like I retained maybe maybe 6 moves of
Yeah.
the 40 that we called. I was like, I don't remember shit in this whole entire match. And the match was a disaster. And I got pissed and I left the ring, right? I just in my mind I was like, "Yo, this is stupid." And I just got pissed. I left the ring. And yeah, my trainer had to sit me down and was like, "Listen, like we having a full conversation about this right now." And I was like, you know what? At 34 years old, yeah, you're right. We having a conversation right now because you're my trainer.
Yeah.
So like,
And that
yeah,
was the thing too. I was 15. So like that was honestly that was probably not like a tough lesson, but that was definitely hard. Like being in there with grown men and locker rooms and shit. Like I was literally I was coming out of like I was a sophomore in high school and I would be in the locker room with people who had children, you know what I mean? And like they had lives and some of them were like on TV and I was just what is going on right now? Like looking back at it now that I am an adult and if a 15-year-old came into pro wrestling, I'd be like, where are your parents? I need to speak with them. Like where
yo.
are they?
So
Luckily, I don't look that much different from when I was 15 years old, which is crazy to say. Like, same height, relatively like now the same weight. Like when I was probably like 215, like when I was 15, 16 years old. So yeah, I'm like basically the same person again. Full
nice.
circle.
So hey, let's jump this over to my favorite part of the podcast, right? And it is the 3 count podcast, 10 count questions, and this is how it works, right? I'm gonna fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast, and whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
All right,
All
let's
right, so
go.
we're gonna put the imaginary timer on for added pressure. Bing! And in the words of my favorite color commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
Growing up Raw, but revisionist history SmackDown.
I feel like I know the answer to this question already, but favorite movie?
Pineapple Express.
Let's go. Marvel or DC?
Marvel, not even close.
Favorite cartoon?
Oh, oh, South Park. Like we could go adult cartoon, right? Doesn't have to be a kid
Yeah, that's
cartoon.
fine. That
Okay,
counts.
South Park.
Apple or Android?
Apple. Come on.
Uh, favorite actor?
Favorite actor. I'll go with Vince Vaughn.
Okay. If not Big Bacon, would you have Big Boss or Big Cheese?
Big Boss. I like alliteration. Big Boss Brad.
Favorite podcast?
Uh, I don't know. I used to listen to him all the time. I've been like slacking in the pot. You know what? I'll go with a new one I've been listening to, The New Heights. I've been listening to the Kelsey brothers break down the NFL. Uh,
Yeah,
a lot of my podcasts aren't really wrestling related because everything else I do is wrestling. So, yeah, I'll go with The New Heights.
I like that. Nominate one person you want to see on this podcast.
Let's see. I'll go with any member of Big Business.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm down with this. And then last but not least, my favorite question I ask every single person that comes on the show. Favorite curse word.
Fudgesicles. No. Definitely. Okay, I don't use it that much, but it's my favorite. The C word. Whatever. I'm not going to say it right now, but whenever someone drops it, and for some reason, especially when girls drop it, it cracks me up. I'm like, oh, they just said the C word, and I start dying like I'm a little kid. So, yeah, definitely that one. That one, it's not a good word, but it cracks me up. I'm a fan of it.
100%. When you look at someone, you're like, yeah, I will see you next Tuesday. I definitely understand. You know, it's
It's
funny.
a jaw dropper. It's
It
a jaw
is.
dropper. Like,
I
what did
love
they just say?
I love being around British people because they say it so fluently. It's just like part of their language. And I'm like, bro, like here is such a bad thing, but you just do not care. And I appreciate
Dude,
this so much.
I couldn't go over there. I'll just be giggling the whole time. I'm
You
like, so many people are saying it.
bet. Well, listen, those are all the questions I have for you. So the last thing I need you to do is just let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
Oh, very easy. Like I said earlier, like alliteration, Big Bacon Brad on all social medias. Wrestling Open every Thursday. Stream it live, IWTV, 8 p.m. We got Beyond Wrestling this Friday at the Ralph Rock Diner in Worcester, Massachusetts. Next Friday, Chaotic. November 4th, Pioneer Valley Pro, their big show, Go Big or Go Home in Springfield, Massachusetts. A lot of big things coming. I'm in a cage that day. I like being in a cage. I'm a caged animal.
Bet. Well, he gave you all his handles. He told you where you can find him, and then you can even check him out, like he said, every Thursday on the Wrestling Open. So you guys know what that means. Like every great part of a wrestling match, we got to take this home because this is the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up this mountain called wrestling. And like I said, I am your Sherpa, but it's never about me. It's about who's entering. So who's entering? You see him right there. It is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Big Bacon, Brad Hollister. And you guys know what to do. Tune in to the next episode and be there, or you're legitimately following us on all of our social media platforms, which is right up above us, right? You're checking us out on YouTube. You're even following us on Spotify. You're leaving us 5-star Frog Splash reviews that you would put on Apple Podcasts. Listen to us on Amazon Podcasts because we're there too. We're also on iHeartRadio because iHeartRadio or whatever their tune goes. Like, anyway, you're buying all of our merch. You're telling your friends about us. You're telling your parents about us. You're telling your dog about us. You're telling your enemies about us because we want those haters in here too. And you're doing all that stuff, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for the outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is just kind of show some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3 Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3 Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3 Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3Count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We're going to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, between time, love y'all.